Hey everyone, Mr. Tanner here again. Today we're going to be looking at the Columbian Exchange. And just like it sounds like, the Columbian Exchange is the exchanging of materials between North America over here and Europe over here. Now, it's important to remember that before Christopher Columbus sailed across the Atlantic Ocean, putting in quotes here, discovered, because he didn't actually discover America. Vikings had been there. There was already native peoples there. But what Columbus did do was he sailed to North America, came back, and told Europe about it. So he's the reason that Europe learned about the giant continents of North and South America. So the exchange is because before most of Europe knew about North and South America, there was no trade between them. But even before Columbus did this, Europe was readily trading with Asia, which is further that way, and Africa. So because Europe already had goods from Africa and goods from Asia, so Asia's on the other side over here, when they started trading goods with North America in this Columbian Exchange, North America got products and goods from Africa and Asia as well, even though most of the travel was happening from Europe to North America. So Africa was sending goods to Europe, Asia was sending goods to Europe, and then those goods were going from Europe to North America. And let's look at what most of the products and goods that went from Europe and then also Africa and Asia to North America. One of the main things that they sent was animals in the livestock. And this included pigs. Prior to the Columbian Exchange in the late early 1500s into the 1600s, there was no pigs in North America. They sent horses. There was no horses native to North America at the time. They sent cows. There was no cows in North America prior to the Columbian Exchange. And they also sent sheep. So a lot of the animals that we are so familiar with in North America that we see all the time were not there before this Columbian Exchange started. So that's one of the first things that went from Europe, Africa, Asia to North America. Another important thing that went from Europe to North America are the grains. Grains are a type of plant that would include wheat, very important for making bread, rice, barley, and oats. You can kind of think of these grains as the base of the food pyramid. These are really, really important in having a healthy society with enough food to eat. Those are really, really critically important. And then maybe not quite as important, but are still interesting to think about. From Europe, Africa, Asia to North America are things like peaches, coffee. Coffee was a big part of the spice trade from the Spice Islands. Olives, which grew very well in Greece in Europe. And then things like onions. So these are the products coming from Europe to North America during this Columbian Exchange. One other thing that we need to pay attention to, it's not good, it's a very, very bad thing, but it's something that came over in huge, huge, devastating amounts, and this is disease. Because the native populations in North America had never been exposed to the European diseases before, they didn't have any immunity to fight them off. And by some estimates, as many as 90% of all Native Americans died due to the diseases like smallpox, measles, influenza. Prior to this, there was never the flu in North America. Whooping cough. These are all diseases that came over from Europe to North America during the Columbian Exchange, and these diseases are responsible for about 90% of people dying in North America. It's a pretty devastating effect on the native populations. 90% of the people in those native populations died as a result of this Columbian Exchange. But goods and products didn't just come to North America. They also went from North America to Europe and Africa. So that's going to be this orange line. We can continue it all the way up into Europe. So we went from North America to Europe and Africa as well. And most of what we sent were new foods that they had never seen. There is one animal that came from North America and went to Europe, the turkey. Turkeys were native to North America. They were not in Europe, Africa, or Asia. They were brought over during the Columbian Exchange. But for the most part, we sent crops, plants, and food that they did not have in those areas. And these are some pretty interesting ones that you might not know were never in Europe prior to this point. Things like tomatoes, corn. The natives called corn maize. Maize is another way of saying corn. That includes peanuts. Spicy peppers, or bell peppers. Peppers are native to the North and South American continent. Pumpkins. Potatoes. Also, sweet potatoes came from North America to Europe and then therefore to Africa and Asia as well through their trade. One other thing that went in both directions was people. So I'm going to put people here in yellow because they went from North America to Europe, usually not by choice. They were captured and taken back to Europe, and a lot of people came from Europe to North America to form colonies. So people were also a part of this trade. And I know this page looks really messy right now, so we're going to redo this really simply, really quickly. All right, reviewing the Columbian Exchange. From Europe to North America, mostly livestock, grains, disease, and we'll add people as well. From North America to Europe, crops. A big one I forgot to mention earlier is tobacco. Tobacco was a major crop in the United States. Crops like tobacco, peppers, corn, and people as well. Now, the Columbian Exchange eventually turned into something that was truly horrific, an absolute stain on humanity when we look back into history, and it was known as the Triangular Trade. And the Triangular Trade, so I get rid of some of the stuff we just put in. And the triangular trade, so no longer looking at Columbian Exchange, now the triangular trade that came later. Raw goods from North America, so this could be cotton for clothes or iron or metal ores from the ground. These raw materials would be transported from North America to Europe. Europe would then manufacture things with that good. They would make them. So they might make clothing from that. They would take the metal ores and make, bridges or refine it to get good pure metals out of the ores. So Europe was doing the manufacturing. Europe would then sell those goods back to the colonies and to Africa. So from there, Europe might take those goods, they'd manufacture them, they would then send them to Africa, or they would send those goods, or those products now, so products going back to North America. Try that again. Products. And that's fine. The horrific part of this was the Middle Passage that went from Africa to the Caribbean islands and then ultimately back up to the colonies. And this Middle Passage was where slaves were purchased and then sold to people in the Caribbean and the colonies. So the triangular trade involved African slaves. It is one of the most horrific crimes against humanity that has ever happened on this earth. It is horrible, every aspect of it, but it's important to learn from these things so that they never happen again. So the triangular trade further involved Africa with buying and selling of slaves. So again, the first part of the triangle was raw goods from the United States colonies at the time to Europe. That's the first part of the triangular trade. Second part of the triangular trade was after those goods, raw goods, had been manufactured into products, they were sold to Africa and to North America. And then the third part, the Middle Passage of that triangular trade, was the purchasing and selling of slaves from Africa back to the colonies. So the Columbian Exchange was the first series of trade that eventually developed into the triangular trade, where slaves were then purchased and sold. So not pleasant things to think about in history, but important things when it looks at how the Western Hemisphere developed, and still important when we look at it to this very day. Hopefully that's some good information for you guys. Until next time.